guys, welcome back. We're going to finish up chapter 12 today. We're going to cover section C, which is all about soil. All right. So what is soil? It's the surface layer. It's right up at the top. It's dirt, basically. Okay. And it's a mixture of inorganic, non-living material, which is the weathered rock we've been talking about, but also some organic, like living or living at one time material. So it could be things like dead leaves, decaying animals, just some of the nutrients that have come out of those things. Okay, and that's soil. That's up at the top. We've got some scientists that actually study soil. Who knew? There's, something for you to strive for someday. Pedologists are scientists who study soil, and they study the composition of soil, how soil is formed, and the erosion and conservation of soil as well. Okay. When we think of our biblical model, using our biblical lenses, we look at creation, we look at the flood, and there's a high probability that the soil we use today is totally different than the soil that God created. Part of the fall of man was that they would have to toil to grow things from the ground. And so it stands to reason that God probably changed the soil somehow. Plus, after the flood, when everything's mixed up and churned up, it was definitely different then, okay? So the rate of formation, if soil is made up of weathered rock and other things, it forms pretty slowly, but the rate of formation depends on the climate of the region. The temperature and the precipitation have an effect, but also the type of rock. When we talked about weathering, we talked about the fact that some rock breaks down easier, okay? So climate and type of rock depend on soil formation. Soil is typically layered, okay? So if you look on page 295, there's a figure there that shows some soil horizons. This is a good picture of it too, okay? A horizon is a distinct layer in the soil. And if you've got it's considered mature soil or the fully developed soil, it usually has three main layers, okay? And we talked about horizon A, B, and C, okay? So the A horizon is the top part. That's the topsoil. Let me get my pen. Okay, that would be like up here, okay? And actually, considering this picture, it's probably all of this dark stuff here, okay? It's the most fertile part. There's plenty of nutrients in there. It contains this thing called humus, which I'll define for you in a minute, not hummus, humus. And that's where plants grow. The roots tend to come down into this part of the soil, okay? Below that, we have what's called the subsoil, the B horizon, and that contains weathered material from C below it, but also these nutrients tend to wash down into the B horizon, the subsoil. So there's some minerals and nutrients there, okay? Below that, we've got the C horizon, and that's right above the bedrock. So not seen in this picture would be bedrock right below it. The bedrock is like the Earth's crust, okay? So that's just a layer of rock, solid rock. It's at different layers, different levels, depending where you are. Some places you can dig, hundreds of feet before you get to the bedrock. Some places you can dig 5 or 10 feet before you get to bedrock. So below those three horizons is bedrock. And the C horizon is basically just broken up pieces of rock. There's not any organic material. It's like gravel, basically, and smaller pieces of rock, okay? So back to humus. That's the organic material that I keep talking about. Decayed animals, poop, leaves, stuff that gets mixed up in the soil. And that's what provides the nutrients up in this top layer here that we grow stuff in, okay? Soil composition. Soil is made of a bunch of different things, okay? But we need to talk about native soil versus transported soil. Native soil means local, okay? It comes from weathered rock locally. So whatever the bedrock is, it breaks up and it makes that soil there. So the original rock of the area affects things like the color and the texture of the soil. If you drive through parts of Utah and Arizona, you see a lot of red rock. So it breaks down and makes red soil. The native soil there is very red because it's high in iron. Transported soil is the soil that's been eroded and transported somewhere else and then deposited on top of native soil somewhere else, okay? These are our main components of soil. Most topsoil contains varying amounts of sand, silt, and clay. Okay, so we've got clay, silt, and sand. Those are our three main components. Okay, but in addition to that, you might get gravel and the organic material and nutrients and minerals. So I've got my sedimentation tube here. Okay, and you can kind of see some pebbles down in the bottom surrounded by sand. So this soil has a large portion of sand in it. This really fine stuff at the top that moves real easy like that, that's the silt and the clay. That's the tiny little particles there. We'll separate some soil in class and you'll be able to feel how fine it is, okay? Loam is the term for topsoil that contains roughly equal parts of clay, silt, and sand. It's good soil, okay? And you can see this triangle, this classification triangle. There's one on page 295 as well. Let me move myself a little bit. There we go. I'm gonna get myself out of the way. Okay. The way we use this is we look at the different percentages of the composition. We can separate the soil into its components. Whatever percentages you have of these three distinct parts will tell you exactly what kind of sand or what kind of soil it is. So this particular sample, you can see these lines kind of joining in the middle here, okay? So we've got 23% clay. So we follow that line in that direction. Let me change colors here. Get to some red, there we go. Okay, we follow it in that direction. We've got 42% silt, so right in between, the 40 and the 50. Move this direction, and we've got 35% sand, which is literally right in between 30 and 40. And where those three lines meet up, that's going to tell us what kind of soil that we're dealing with. That's loam, okay? That's roughly equal parts. You've got a range though, okay? You've got clay, you've got sandy clay, you've got all these different things, okay? If you look in the book, if you look on page 295, I want you to practice this. I want you to figure out what the name of the soil is that's 30% clay, 10% silt, so 30% clay, 10% silt, and 70% sand, okay? Pause the video and try to figure that out. And when you come back, I'll give you the answer. All right, you're back. So the correct answer is sandy clay loam. It would be down in this region, okay? The colors are different in the book, but the little triangle classification chart acts the same, all right? Soil is incredibly important. It is a natural resource that is vital to agriculture. I mean, that's how we eat is growing things. So it's important for us to take care of it. This thing known as the Dust Bowl occurred during the Great Depression. And what happened was farms were being overused, they were being mismanaged, but also they were shutting down because there wasn't any work and it was just a big problem. So there was tons of dirt fields with no growth on them. There was a drought, so it was very dry. And then these high winds came through and the plains region of the United States was literally filled with dust, and it caused a lot of problems. There was trouble breathing. It was messy. The animals were having trouble, and it made it even harder to grow things because all that topsoil blew away. Okay, so we need to protect the soil. Soil conservation is protecting the soil. It's teaching us how to use it properly and how to save it, not let it be washed away or blown away. Okay. One method is known as contour plowing, and you can see that that's the picture of it right here. And when you think of farming, you probably think of all these like straight rows, right? But what contour plowing does is it follows the shape of the land, and it prevents water from being wasted, but it also prevents the water from washing the soil away. It just helps it hang on to it a little bit better. Okay. There's also this thing known as strip cropping. Okay. So it's not what I showed down here, but what it is it's planting alternate crops. Okay, so one year I might plant every other row of corn, and I'm going to give the green beans row a year off, and then I'm going to alternate the next year. If you grow the same thing over and over again in the soil, you reduce the nutrients from it, and it doesn't have a chance to rejuvenate itself. So alternating crops is really important as well. Windbreaks. You'll oftentimes see a tall row of trees planted next to fields, agricultural crops, because the wind will come in and blow things away. So those windbreaks prevent that. Short walls help too. And then finally, ground cover. This is everywhere. If you've ever seen a landslide, hillsides by houses, it's probably because there was a fire previously, and it burned all the ground cover. If there's grass or weeds, even, like, it doesn't really matter what's growing. If there's something growing on the soil, the roots are going to hang on to the soil and keep it in place, even when wind and water comes along. So planting things is really important. That's why we tend to have more mudslides and landslides after really, really big brush fires. Okay. All right. That's it for chapter 12. See you later.